What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to basketball. You're gonna have to ignore all of this. I just got back from a volleyball game. It's been a busy week for me. It's that time of the year where my company, for those of you that don't know, I run a basketball analytics company. We're hiring new interns and everything, so I'm reading over resume, doing interviews and stuff like that. Busy time of the year, but you don't care about that. We want to talk about the best and the worst landing spots for each of the projected lottery picks this year. I think it's no secret that a big part of a player's development is where they end up, right? The situation that they go to. There's certain franchises that historically just haven't been all that great at developing people. In some, it's a great situation. And some of them, it's the players you play next to. So today we're going to look at an article that kind of talks about that. And you guys already know it's on Bleacher Report. Shout out to Zach Buckley. I feel like we see Zach Buckley writing a lot of things. I'm not all that familiar with a lot of these guys, but I'm very curious to see because, like, let's be honest, right? And I know I'm going to get some hate comments just because of this, so just calm down. Let me explain, all right? If we were being honest about it, like, places like Detroit, Charlotte, Washington would be the worst fit for like a lot of people just because like developmentally they're not like that great for them. But I'm guessing they're more so talking about the current like player situation they're going into. So just wanted to throw that out there. And I know the Charlotte Hornets and the Wizards, like they've got new people coming in and everything like that. Look, I'll believe it when I see it. We're all hoping for the best of them. We don't like having bad franchises that don't know what they're doing. Chicago Bulls. But anyway, Matas Buzelis, let me guess. Where would be the best place for Buzelis to end up? Because I'm guessing they're going to go based off like where they're at in the lottery too. Best place is probably the Spurs. Where would be the worst place for him to end up? Like Utah or something like that, because he'd be playing behind a lot of other better guys, but they have a good development system. But yep, best fit San Antonio Spurs because he's playing next to Wembanyama, right? He would also get the chance to probably put the ball on the floor a little bit, which is a big part of his development and something that I don't necessarily trust in his game from watching the film. The shooting hasn't quite been there yet. But ideally, if he works out, you can slap him next to Wemby, and now you've got some length and you've got some floor spacing and hopefully a bunch of people that can put the ball on the floor on one team, and ideally you could have a pretty cool thing going on. I'm guessing their idea with Charlotte is it's like the complete opposite of what I just said. Yeah, no, they're talking about how LaMelo Ball just has the ball so much, and I mean, he's hurt most of the time anyway, but you would imagine that they're probably going to try to add another ball handler, hopefully someone to play the two for them. I still think that there's a decent chance that Castle ends up there, but I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get picked at like 4 for the Spurs either. But if Buzelis ended up there, I do think it'd be kind of an awkward fit. I'm not exactly sure like what his role would be on the team right away. I think more likely than not, Buzelis is coming off the bench to start his career anyway. But how many ball handling opportunities is he really going to have in Charlotte? Probably not as many. So yeah, I can understand why that's a little bit worse. Stephon Castle. We're still listing him as a point guard, huh? For those of you that don't know, I'm not going to go into the whole story, but no scout is buying into this whole point guard thing, and that's totally fine because I think he's going to be a really good two. But anyway, who is going to be the best fit for him? I'm going to say probably the Spurs again. I think it makes sense to put him there, unless they say, well, they've got a bunch of other players at his position. And the worst fit, it's got to be like the Pistons, right? Because like if you throw another non-shooting defender on that team, Cade Cunningham might have a stroke. Best fit, the Utah Jazz. Actually, that makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, you know what? I can kind of agree with that. He can play next to Keontae George. In theory, he would be a good guy to play off of him. You build some defense on the perimeter. You could kind of use a 2/3. He probably doesn't end up playing the 3 more likely than not. But I can see the fit there with him next to like Markkanen and those guys. So I like that fit a lot. Who's the worst? Yeah, Detroit Pistons. That's exactly what we were talking about, right? Like you don't want to put this guy next to them. I've said this before about Stephon Castle. If he could shoot even like 3% from 3, he'd probably be the number 1 pick, right? He's that talented. He's good at everything else, but he can't shoot. And look, like one skill shouldn't define everything. I see a lot of times in the comments like this guy can't shoot, so he can't play next to him. Like basketball is just not that simple. I just promise you, it's not that simple. But in the Pistons case, like we need to start putting the right talent around people, and that's not going to get it done. Next up, Donovan Clingan. Okay, who would be the best fit for Donovan Clingan? Like, it's not going to be the Spurs or anything. Like, it's not going to be like the Wizards or the Hawks, obviously. It's not going to be like the Jazz. Like, you could probably say like the Bulls or something like that would be an interesting one for them. Maybe the Grizzlies too. So I'm gonna go with Grizzlies for them. And then the worst pick is probably Houston, right? Because it just doesn't make sense for him to come off the bench there. The best fit is the Charlotte Hornets. Oh, do tell. Because I believe there's a man named Mark Williams there, and I probably think Clingan might be better better than Mark Williams, but I don't think it's worth not trying out. And I know Mark Williams is coming off injury and everything like that. He's young. Let's see what he can do at the end of the day. So I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't think he's I think he's a good guy to bring in to have like some good culture and everything and a smart basketball mind. I know the guys at UConn sure don't want him to end up there, but that's just them at the end of the day. Worst fit the Houston Rockets. That makes perfect sense. They already got Şengün there. He's not going to get as much or as big of an opportunity to play make like they're going to want to for his development. I truly think that's going to be a big part of his game because he does have some pretty good court vision at the end of the day, and you hope that he can kind of turn into like a Sabonis type hub, but with really, really good defensive instincts like he already has and good foot mobility. So I can see why throwing him in Houston's not going to make a ton of sense. You got Şengün, right? Şengün's going to be awesome, so we don't need him there. Next up, Ron Holland of the Ignite. My opinion remains the same of Ron Holland. I don't think there's too many people that disagree with it. You watch him play basketball, super, super talented, but he's lacking a lot of intangibles, so he's going to have to go to a franchise that like really knows what to do with him. Give me the Jazz for best pick, and because he's such a poor shooter, give me Detroit for the worst pick again. Best fit the Memphis Grizzlies. I don't disagree necessarily with that either. That'd be a good spot situationally for him. There's not a bunch of guys really at that position right now. They could use some lengthier wings on that team. We know they're probably going to be targeting some in the offseason, so ideally he'd be able to come off the bench or something like that and develop and learn around some other good pros on the team. That's the hope at the very least, so I could understand that. And then again, Detroit, it's just, again, how many of these guys do you want to put on the floor? It doesn't make sense to have another just like raw athlete, non-shooter on the floor that you have to develop. There's enough projects on Detroit at this point. We don't need any more projects on that team, so that makes sense to me. Next up, DK, Dalton Knecht. Best fit is definitely the Portland Trailblazers. Anything else, and it doesn't make a ton of sense. The Heat aren't a lottery team, so that doesn't make a ton of sense. Can we say the Bulls? I think we could say the Bulls because, no, not the Bulls, because they could use a wing. That's probably not the worst idea in the world. It's not going to be the Jazz. He'd fit on like a lot of things. Like, you could even say all the way up to Houston or something like that. You probably don't need him in Charlotte necessarily. Like, because is he going to play the 2? I don't know. Let's just see what it is. Best fit is Portland Trailblazers. Makes perfect sense. I feel like this pick is kind of written in stone at this point. For the Portland Trailblazers to be successful, they have to start investing in their talents because they haven't done a great job of that, like in their franchise. Just they haven't, right? They get all this talent coming in. They just never do a good job of putting the right talent around those guys. Scoot Henderson is still a really, really, really good prospect. They started to figure it out at the end of the season, like, oh, this is how we can use him. We have to put these types of players around him. And one of those things is going to be somebody with some gravity and some shooting, right? And a guy that could be a lengthier defender over time. He's a solid athlete. He's a smart basketball player. You're probably not hitting a home run with that pick either, so just putting a guy like him on that team makes a ton of sense. Worst fit is the Chicago Bulls, actually. Why exactly did they say that? And since the Bulls' top scorers also are their ball handlers, Kobe White, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, that may not seek out catch and fire attempts for Knecht the way more... No, that's a really good point, actually. The Bulls don't exactly have, like, playmakers on the team ever since Lonzo Ball went down. They've more so just had scorers and stuff like that. That's part of the reason they can't win any basketball games. It's like just ultimate ISO ball and nonsense, and they're just not the best passers. So, okay, I do see it by that logic. There's nobody that's going to be setting him up, and he's not going to be a guy to create his own shot in the NBA. He's going to have to come off floppy actions or things like that to go get his shot. Next up, Zaccharie Risacher, potential number 1 or number 2 overall pick, one of the 2 biggest Frenchmen coming out of this one. I love Risacher's game. I think he's going to be a very nice NBA player. You can kind of see best fit as the Atlanta Hawks. Is it really? Here's the thing. We just don't know what the Hawks roster is going to look like and what they're going to do. So I just have a hard time saying that at the end of the day. Like, where would be the best fit for him? It's probably not Washington, right? Like, there's a positional conflict there, and the team is pretty historically poor at developing talent. So is that it? Yeah, it's the Washington Wizards. If they do the same thing for Sarr, and they're just like, yeah, we don't want either of these guys to end up in Washington. Like, I'm sorry, Wizards fans, you can't ignore it. And you'll tell me, like, it's going to be better now. Y'all don't know shit of what's going on in there. I promise you don't. Like, don't act like you do either. I'll tell you, like, without going into too much detail, I'm very connected in the Wizards organization, and it's crazy. If you guys want to maybe know a little bit more about that, hop on my Discord and like shoot me a DM or something like that. I won't give you like too much detail, but I'll give you a little bit. But the Washington Wizards, there's just a positional battle there. It doesn't make a ton of sense, and like, I don't think Risacher is like superstar potential or anything like that. I think there's more of a positional need at the center for them. So I don't know. I just don't think it makes a ton of sense. And then you're potentially making like Denny and him play off each other, and maybe that works, but it's not an ideal thing to me. I don't know. The more I think about it, I don't completely hate it. I think it's just more so the organization. Is that kind of what they're talking about? It's the positional thing. And yeah, I guess they could be patient enough. But yeah, he's not the centerpiece talent. And yeah, for a number 2 pick, that's kind of iffy. So I get it. Next up, Alex Sarr. They got him as a power forward. Like, I'd just rather have him play center, man. I'd rather have him be in like the pick and roll coverages and stuff like that, especially because I think he'll be able to switch on to a lot of guards sooner rather than later, and I kind of want to see teams start to experiment with that. But best fit, oh, tell me it's the Atlanta Hawks again and the Washington Wizards. Let me see it. Best fit Atlanta Hawks. Yeah, they move on from like Capella and maybe a Kongwu for sure. Clear out some room for him. That's who I think is going to go number 1. I just think it makes the most sense because here's my thing, right? I hold Sarr and Risacher in very even points. Like, and I give a slight edge to Sarr just because he's 7 foot, right? And it's just harder to find 7 foot dudes at the end of the day. So I'd much rather just go get a guy like that than Risacher. And I like both of them, like I said, very, very evenly. It's just that's how I kind of differentiate between the 1 and 2, at least in my mind. Worst fit is the Washington Wizards. Yeah, even though they have the positional need and everything, it's just like, what kind of situation is he coming into there? We don't even know who's playing point guard next year. You're going to be like, oh, it's probably Jordan Poole or whatever. Like, I have to imagine they're going to try to find something else other than that. I have to. I don't know if Tyus Jones is coming back. That's a whole thing in itself. So who's going to be setting him up for anything? Because like, here's the thing, like Sarr's not going out there and creating his own shot or anything like that. He's going to be a mad defensive presence, and he's going to be a run, jump, and dunk kind of guy, most likely on offense. That'll occasionally step out and pop out to hit a 3. So who's going to be running that with him? I don't know. Like, it's not a great fit either way. I'm not saying neither of these guys can succeed in Washington. It does look a lot harder. Next up, and potentially the last one, looks like they're only doing like 8 of these, Reed Sheppard. So I'm guessing they're going to say the best fit's probably Houston because they need the shooting and everything like that, and he could be a backup point guard for them potentially. What's going to be the worst fit for them? Are they going to say like the Bulls again or something because he wouldn't be able to be a ball handler and he'd just kind of be like an undersized 2 on the team, and then he'd really be out of place defensively? Let's see. Oh, I didn't even see best fit is Houston Rockets. But yeah, no, it makes sense, right? Like, here's the thing, like if the Rockets had like the 8th or 9th pick and they took him, I'd be a lot happier with that. I can't get over taking a Reed Sheppard with the 3rd pick, and I'm willing to put like a 90% confidence in the fact that Houston's trading back or trading that pick for somebody else in general. Maybe it's like a Darius Garland or something like that, or a Donovan Mitchell. I don't know who exactly it is. Maybe it's Bridges. I don't know, but I just don't think it makes sense to take a Reed Sheppard at 3. I just don't think that makes like economic sense, if anything else. But what's the worst fit? The Portland trip? Yeah, okay, no, actually, that makes a ton of sense. There's too many other people at that position. He's not going to play point guard on a team like that. They've already taken some swings on Scoot, Shaden Sharp, right? Like, Simons is still on the team. You got Brogdon on the team still, and apparently Brogdon wants to kick it there, so he must really like Portland. Like, I haven't actually had any contact to confirm that's true, and I don't always like to say that stuff unless I actually like have some sort of knowledge to say that, but that's the word on the street apparently, is that Brogdon wants to stay. So fair enough. Yeah, even though he isn't a long-term keeper, yeah, there's too much else going on that roster. You need guys that can try to help Scoot Henderson right now. This does not help Scoot Henderson right now. But yeah, y'all, I guess that's kind of a quicker one to talk about this stuff. I'm going to be putting out another ideal offseason tomorrow. I've only got a couple of these left, and if I've got more time, I'm going to try to redo some of the earlier ones before I had made the spreadsheet and everything like that, or before I had made the spreadsheet a lot better than what it was. So you guys let me know if there's any that you want me to redo, because I'm redoing the Spurs one almost for sure, because it was the first one in the series, and I just think that'd be a cool one to redo. But hey, let me know in the comments too, like, what would be some of the best and worst spots for your lottery picks and everything. Like, I'm surprised they didn't do like a Cody Williams or something like that on here. I think that would have been kind of interesting to look at. But anyway, appreciate you guys as always, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.